Hello students, welcome back in today's class. Let's have first a quick recap of what we did yesterday. Yesterday we had a discussion on the functions of the Indian Constitution. So the first function that we have discussed yesterday was to provide a set of basic rules that allow for the minimal coordination amongst the members of a society. Now, when we live in a society together, we need to agree on some basic rules, and these rules should not only be known to them, but at the same time they must also be enforceable. If the citizens have no assurance that others will follow these rules, they will themselves have no reason to follow them, right? So the rules must also be, or they should be, legally enforceable, okay, which will give an assurance to everybody that the others will follow these rules, and if they are not going to do so, they are going to get punished. Okay, so the basic functions must be there so that it will provide, or it allows for a minimal coordination amongst the member of a society. Next one was to specify who has the power to make the decision. Now under constitution, for example the Indian Constitution, it is specified very specifically that the parliament gets to decide who is going to make law and the policies, right? So it is parliament itself which is needed to be organized in a very particular manner. So it is very important, or you can say there must be the identifying of what kind of a law should be there in a society, and before identifying what kind of a law should be there in a society, there must be the identification of who has the authority to enact it, as it is the parliament who has the authority to enact the laws. So there must be a law that bestows this authority on the parliament, and that is your constitution, right? So this is the second function of the constitution, that is to provide or to specify who has the power to make the decision in a society, and also to decide how the government will be constituted. Now moving on to the third, that is to limit on what a government can impose on its citizen. That means, as the picture is being shown, see, there is always a discrimination based on the skin color, okay, based on the religion that you belong to, okay, based on the color of the clothes that you want to wear, right, based on the skin color, right? So there should not be any such kind of a discrimination among the people living in a society. So the third function of the constitution is specifying that what all things, or what are the limitations that has been put forwarded on what a government can impose on its citizen, right? So if there will be any kind of a injustice, if there will be any kind of a discrimination based on color, based on religion, okay, so it will lead to the unjust and unfair of those laws which has been initiated or which has been introduced by the government. So even though they were passed by a government that had came into existence based on certain procedures, there would be something obviously unjust about the government that, or who are enacting these laws. Okay, so constitution is trying to put some limit on the power of the government in many ways, and the very common example that can be given is your fundamental rights of India. The most common way of limiting the power of the government is to specify that there are certain fundamental rights that all of us possess as a citizen, and which even the government can are not allowed to violate. Okay, so the interpretation of these rights though varies from constitution to constitution, but most of the constitution will protect a basic cluster of rights. So the citizens will be protected from being arrested arbitrarily or for no reason. Okay, so these fundamental rights are one of the, you can say, area in which the constitution has put some limit on the power of government. Though citizen will also have the right to some basic liberties like freedom of speech, right, freedom of association, and the freedom to conduct a trade or a business, right. So these are some of the rights which has been provided, and even the government cannot violate them, though sometimes these rights can be limited during the times of national emergency, right, or if the constitution specifies certain circumstances under which these rights may be withdrawn, but it will not be getting violated by the government. Okay, so this is regarding the third function of the constitution, that is to put some limits on what a government can impose on its citizen. Now let's move on to the fourth and the final function, that is the fourth function of a constitution is basically to enable the government to fulfill the aspiration of a society and create the condition for a just society. Now, earlier during the 19th century, okay, the constitutions were there who basically or who have largely allocated the decision making power and setting some limits to the government power. But when it is being compared with the 20th century constitution, for example, the Indian constitution, which is one of the finest example, okay, which provides such kind of a framework to do the positive things like to express the aspiration and goals of a society. So in this perspective, the Indian constitution was very much innovative. Okay, now societies with deep entrenched inequalities of various kinds, right, will not only have to set the limits on the power of the government, but at the same time they will also have to enable and empower the government to take the positive measures to overcome the forms of inequality or the deprivation. Now, as you can see in the paragraph just below, the Indian constitution enables the government to take the positive welfare measures, some of which are legally enforceable. That means government should take the positive measures, but at the same time those should also be legally enforced. Now, for example, India aspires to be a society that is free of caste discrimination. Okay, so if this is our society's aspiration, the government will have to be enabled or empowered to take all the necessary steps to achieve this goal, right? So because of this certain aspiration of the members of a society, the discrimination based on the caste, or you can say there was an abolition of the caste system. There should not be any kind of a discrimination based on caste. Now, just like India, in a country like South Africa also, which had a deep history of a racial discrimination, its new constitution has also enabled that the government to end the racial discrimination, that there should not be any kind of a discrimination based on racial among the people of the South Africa. So more positively, or you can say most probably, a constitution may enshrine the aspiration of a society. So in this aspect, the Indian constitution is, you can say, very much innovative in this respect, and it has always welcomed all the aspirations and the goals, so that there can be a creation, so that there can be a situation for a just society. Okay, so this is regarding the fourth function, that is constitution is enabling the government to fulfill the aspiration of a society and is trying to create a condition, a situation which is just for making a just society. Okay, so these are the four basic functions of the Indian constitution. That is, first one, to provide set of basic rules that allow for the minimal coordination amongst the member of a society. The second function, to specify who has the power to make the decision. Third one, to limit on what a government can impose on its citizens, right? When it comes to fundamental rights, even the government do not have power to violate or to, you can say, discriminate an individual based on the fundamental rights. The fourth one, to enable the government to fulfill the aspiration of a society and to create a condition for a just society. This much for today, that is functions of the Indian Constitution. Thank you, class.